Russia-Ukraine war is entering a more dangerous phase, one that could redraw the battlefield yet again. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has issued a stark warning, saying that Moscow may be preparing to pull Belarus back into the war.
In March, Ukraine did something that no military analyst predicted at the start of the year. While Russia was launching its celebrated spring offensive, pouring soldiers and armor into assault after assault across a 1,200-kilometer front line, Ukraine was quietly doing something else entirely. Something that has left military planners in Moscow scrambling for answers they do not have. Ukraine took territory back. Not a small patch of contested ground. Not a symbolic recapture of a burned-out village. 50 square kilometers of occupied Ukrainian land returned to Ukrainian control in a single month. That comes on top of 300 square kilometers recaptured in February and a total of nearly 480 square kilometers recovered since Ukraine launched its counter-offensive operations earlier in the 2009 year. And Russia's spring offensive, the campaign Putin promised would finally break Ukraine and deliver the Donbass, recorded its worst month of territorial gain in 2.5 years. America watched, America supported, and America's investment in Ukraine's defense just produced results that no one in the Kremlin anticipated. What you are about to see is not just a battlefield update. It is the story of how Ukraine turned the tables on the largest land army in Europe during that army's own offensive. And why what happened in March changes everything about how this war ends. To understand why this is so significant, you need to understand what Russia was expecting when it launched its spring offensive in March. Putin's strategy has never been complicated. It has always been built on one assumption, that Russia's manpower advantage, its ability to feed more soldiers into the fight than Ukraine can handle, would eventually grind through Ukrainian defenses, wave after wave, sector after sector, until Ukraine breaks. That strategy produced results in 2025. Russia was advancing at a rate of approximately 12.9 square kilometers per day in March 2025. 5 square miles of Ukrainian territory falling to Russian forces every single day for months on end. Fast forward 12 months to March 2026, Russia's rate of advance has collapsed to 2.58 square kilometers per day, 1 square mile. Russia's forward momentum has been slowed by a factor of 5 in a single year. But here is the number that changes everything. Ukraine's daily territorial gain rate in the same period is 4.66 square kilometers, almost twice what Russia is gaining. In the month that Putin promised would kickstart Russia's final push for victory, Ukraine is outpacing Russian advances by nearly 2-to-1. The Institute for the Study of War assessed March 2026 as the first month in 2.5 years where Russia's net territorial gain is effectively zero. Ukraine's advances canceled out everything Russia fought for in the same period. And here is the part no one is talking about. This is happening during Russia's own offensive. Ukraine is counterattacking and outpacing Russian advances, while simultaneously absorbing a massive increase in Russian assault pressure across the entire front. That is not defense, that is dominance. Consider what that means for Putin's narrative back home. Russia launched its spring offensive with public promises of sweeping territorial gains and the imminent collapse of Ukrainian resistance. The actual numbers from March tell a completely different story. A story the Kremlin is working very hard to keep away from the Russian public. Heavy fighting has been reported across multiple sectors simultaneously. Kostiantynivka, Lyman, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, and the fortress belt cities in Donetsk are all under sustained Russian assault pressure. Russia is attacking everywhere at once, stretching its already depleted manpower across the widest possible front, and still, Ukraine is gaining ground. That is the detail that breaks the Russian narrative completely. Russia is attacking at maximum pressure and losing territory at the same time. The casualty figures behind these territorial changes tell an even more devastating story for Moscow. Ukraine's armed forces killed or wounded 35,351 Russian soldiers in March 2026 alone. That is a 29% increase over February's already catastrophic figures. Russia is losing more soldiers per month than at any previous point in the conflict during its own offensive. According to Euromaidan Press, 96% of those casualties were caused by Ukrainian drones. Ukraine's flying and ground robots are accounting for nearly every Russian soldier lost in the conflict. The drone advantage that America and its allies helped Ukraine build is now producing results at a scale that Russian military planners have no effective answer for. Russia's recruitment pipeline is not keeping pace. Russia planned to recruit 409,000 soldiers by the end of 2026. Its current daily recruitment rate of 1,120 soldiers will leave it 65,000 soldiers short of that target. More soldiers are being lost each month than are being recruited to replace them. Russia's frontline strength is shrinking during its own spring offensive. The math is simple and devastating. 35,000 casualties in March, 65,000 recruitment shortfall projected for the full year. Every month that passes at this casualty rate accelerates the point at which Russia's frontline capacity becomes critically degraded. And behind this hemorrhaging casualty rate lies a deeper problem that Russia cannot solve through recruitment alone. Ukraine's Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov set a target earlier this year of 50,000 irrecoverable Russian casualties per month. The March figure of 35,000 represents significant progress toward that benchmark. When irrecoverable losses consistently exceed recruitment, the arithmetic of attrition runs in only one direction. Ukraine designed this equation deliberately, and America's support made it possible. But the territorial gains and casualty figures are only the visible results of something far more sophisticated happening beneath the surface of this conflict. Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrskyi, described it in a Facebook post on April 15th. Two words that carry enormous strategic weight: active defense. Syrskyi put it plainly. Ukraine is countering Russian numbers with Ukrainian quality of combat operations, forcing the enemy to play by Ukrainian rules, constantly pushing back the deadlines Russia sets for completing its objectives. This is not the passive holding of defensive lines. This is a deliberate operational strategy built on a specific insight. Russia's infiltration tactics in 2025 allowed it to claim territory, even when it had only managed to slip a handful of troops into a sector. Small forward positions, thin supply lines, units spread far beyond their ability to be reinforced or sustained. Ukraine identified those weak points, and then it attacked them. Where Russia stretched itself thin to claim territory, Ukraine struck back with concentrated force. The 50 square kilometers recovered in March came directly from these infiltrated positions that Russia could not adequately defend when Ukraine pushed. The gains are strategic, not random. Every recaptured sector was chosen because its loss weakens Russia's ability to conduct operations in adjacent areas that matter more. George Barros of the Institute for the Study of War confirmed this explicitly. These counteroffensive gains are not accidental or circumstantial. Ukraine has been systematically degrading Russian defenses in key sectors for months, creating the conditions for the counteroffensives now producing results. Ukraine learned from the failures of its 2023 counteroffensive. That operation spread Ukrainian forces across too many axes simultaneously and achieved too little at too great a cost. Ukraine is not making that mistake again. It is identifying Russia's weakest points and concentrating combat power precisely there, while maintaining stalwart defense everywhere Russia is pushing hardest. In Oleksandrivka and Dnipropetrovsk, Ukraine is preventing Russia from building the buffer zones it needs to protect its forces in Donetsk. Every gain Ukraine makes in those sectors forces Russia to redirect soldiers who were originally destined for Donetsk operations toward plugging the new gaps. Ukraine is not just taking territory. It is pulling Russian forces away from the objectives that matter most to Putin. And then there are the drones, the dimension of this conflict where Ukraine has now achieved something unprecedented in this entire war. March 2026 was the first month in which Ukraine launched more long-range drones at Russian territory than Russia launched at Ukraine. 7,347 Ukrainian drones struck targets inside Russia versus 6,462 Russian drones launched at Ukraine. Ukraine has reversed the long-range strike equation that Russia dominated for years. Inside Russia alone, 76 targets were struck by Ukrainian drones in March. 15 of those strikes hit facilities directly related to Russia's oil refining sector. Ukraine is not just defending its territory. It is systematically attacking the industrial and logistical infrastructure that sustains Russia's ability to fight. Every refinery struck reduces the fuel available for Russian vehicles and equipment on the front. Every ammunition depot destroyed is a resupply that never reaches the soldiers pushing toward the fortress belt. The period between June 2025 and March 2026 saw Ukraine conduct 492 strikes against Russian air defense systems. Those strikes created aerial corridors, and Ukraine is now flying through those corridors to strike command centers, Shahed drone storage units, and troop concentrations in the occupied territories. The air defenses that once protected Russian rear infrastructure are gone. Ukraine is reaching targets that were previously untouchable, and Russia has no fast answer for what Ukraine has built. Ukraine's new generation of mid-range drones, flying further than FPV systems and costing far less than long-range strategic drones, are now filling the gap between the battlefield and deep strike operations. Combined with the United Kingdom's commitment to deliver more than 120,000 additional drones to Ukraine in 2026, the drone advantage is not a temporary condition. It is a structural shift that will compound with every passing month. Ukraine also scored a near 90% interception rate against Russian drones in March, using its new generation of interceptor drones that defeat incoming Shaheds at a fraction of the cost of traditional missile interceptors. Russia is launching fewer drones than Ukraine and seeing far less success with the ones it does launch. Underground routes are now being used by Ukraine to move troops and military equipment in ways Russia never anticipated. Networks of tunnels built originally for defensive ambushes against Russian infiltrators have evolved into logistical arteries that allow Ukraine to shift forces and supplies without exposing them to drone observation. Russia has no counter for what it cannot see. Ukraine is moving beneath the battlefield while Russia watches from above. Here is what Ukraine's March performance means for America, and it is the dimension most coverage consistently underestimates. Ukraine is not just winning ground. Ukraine is demonstrating what American military investment, delivered consistently and intelligently over 4 years, actually produces on a 21st century battlefield. The Delta battlefield management system Ukraine uses to coordinate its counteroffensive operations is built on American concepts of networked warfare. The intelligence feeding Ukraine's targeting decisions flows through American and allied surveillance networks. The drone technology, accounting for 96% of Russian casualties, was developed and scaled with American technical assistance. The artillery systems defending the fortress belt cities were provided through American-led coordination frameworks. What often gets overlooked is this: America did not just give Ukraine weapons. America gave Ukraine the framework to become one of the most innovative and effective fighting forces on Earth. Ukraine's military conducts operational assessments after every engagement, refines its tactics continuously, and has restructured its entire command system around the core model that improves coordination across all levels of military decision-making. It is embedding research and development directly into active combat units. It is building better training pipelines for air defense operators. It is creating underground logistical networks through tunnel systems that Russia never anticipated and has no counter for. Every American taxpayer who has supported Ukraine's defense should understand what that investment is delivering right now. Back-to-back months of Ukrainian territorial gains. A 29% increase in Russian casualties during Russia's own offensive. Net zero Russian territorial gain in March for the first time in 2.5 years. A drone advantage that Ukraine now holds over Russia in long-range strikes for the first time in the entire conflict. This is what sustained American commitment to allied defense produces, when the recipient is as determined and innovative as Ukraine has proven itself to be. Putin launched this invasion, expecting to face a military that would fold in days. He created a military that is now outpacing his spring offensive. That transformation happened because America and its allies refused to let Ukraine fight alone. 50 square kilometers in March, 300 in February. 480 total since the counteroffensive began. Russia's advance rate cut by a factor of 5. 35,000 Russian casualties in a single month. Net zero Russian territorial gain in March for the first time in 2.5 years. Putin told Russia the spring offensive would deliver the Donbass. He told his generals Ukraine was on the verge of collapse. He told the world that Russia's manpower advantage would eventually grind through whatever Ukraine put in its way. Every number from March 2026 says something completely different. The spring offensive that was supposed to mark the beginning of Russia's final push for victory has instead marked the month where Ukraine outpaced Russian advances, inflicted record casualties, and began taking territory back at a rate without precedent in this conflict. Is Russia's spring offensive already over before it truly began? Or does Putin have one more move that changes what we saw in March? Drop your answer below. I read every single comment. If you want daily coverage that does not sugarcoat what is actually happening, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I post every single day and I am not stopping.